Europe just made a move that almost nobody saw coming, and it could quietly reshape who controls the future of technology. Somewhere inside the halls of Brussels, a new law has been signed that changes the rules of the game for semiconductors, batteries, drones, and robotics across an entire continent. Governments are no longer just handing out research grants and hoping something useful gets built. They are now forcing themselves to become the first customers of the very technology they helped fund, and that single shift could decide who wins the next decade of industrial power. If you have ever wondered why Europe keeps inventing brilliant technology, but somehow keeps losing the race to scale it, this video is going to answer that question in a way you have probably never heard explained before. Stick around until the end, because the details of this policy reveal something much bigger than just another government initiative. This is about sovereignty, survival, and whether an entire continent can finally stop giving away its best ideas to competitors overseas. Before we go further, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we break down stories like this one before mainstream media even catches up. Let's start with the basic problem that has haunted Europe for decades. Europe has some of the best universities, the best engineers, and one of the largest pools of STEM graduates on the planet, producing roughly 1.5 million science and technology graduates every single year. Yet time after time, brilliant European inventions end up being manufactured, scaled, and dominated by companies in the United States or China. The idea gets born in a lab in Munich or Cambridge, but the factory, the supply chain, and the profits often end up somewhere else entirely. This pattern has a name inside policy circles, and it is often called the European paradox. Europe is excellent at invention but historically weak at commercialization, meaning the region struggles to turn breakthrough research into globally dominant companies. Deep tech in Europe is now valued at somewhere between $690 billion and $737 billion, and it captures around 30% of all venture capital investment in the region. Despite those impressive numbers, founders keep hitting the same wall when they try to scale from a promising prototype into a mass-market industrial product. That wall usually looks the same no matter which country you are in. Startups build an incredible piece of hardware. Whether it is a new battery chemistry, a semiconductor design, or an autonomous drone system, and then they discover that nobody wants to be the first buyer. Governments and large corporations tend to prefer proven, established suppliers from abroad rather than taking a risk on a homegrown startup, even when that startup's technology is superior. Without that first major customer, these companies cannot generate the revenue needed to scale manufacturing, and many either get acquired by foreign firms or simply run out of money before they ever reach their full potential. This is exactly the gap that the EU Industrial Accelerator Act was designed to close. Instead of only funding research and innovation, the new law pushes European governments and public institutions to become actual buyers of European-built hardware. Sectors like semiconductors, batteries, drones, and robotics are explicitly targeted because they sit at the center of both economic competitiveness and national security. The logic is simple but powerful, because if the government commits to purchasing domestically produced chips or batteries, startups suddenly have the guaranteed demand they need to justify building real factories. Think about what this means in practical terms for a small semiconductor startup based somewhere like Grenoble or Dresden. Previously, that startup might spend years knocking on doors trying to convince skeptical corporate buyers to switch away from established Asian or American suppliers. Under the new framework, public procurement rules are being restructured so that European-made components get preferential treatment in government contracts and critical infrastructure projects. That single change can transform a struggling three-person startup into a company with the order volume needed to build an actual production line. The same principle applies directly to the battery sector, which has become one of the most strategically important industries in the entire world. Europe has world-class battery research coming out of countries like Germany, Sweden, and France, Yet for years, the actual mass production of battery cells has been dominated by manufacturers in China and South Korea. The Industrial Accelerator Act aims to change that dynamic by ensuring that European electric vehicle makers, public transit systems, and energy storage projects prioritize batteries manufactured within the European Union. This is not just about competitiveness anymore, because battery supply chains are now considered a matter of energy security and geopolitical independence. Drones represent another fascinating piece of this puzzle, especially given how much the world has changed regarding defense and security priorities. European drone startups have developed remarkably sophisticated technology for agriculture, logistics, surveillance, and increasingly for defense applications. However, many of these companies previously struggled because national defense ministries and public agencies defaulted to purchasing cheaper or more established options from outside the continent. The new procurement rules are designed to flip that default, making it easier and often mandatory for public bodies to source drone technology from European manufacturers whenever feasible. Robotics ties all of these threads together because modern robotics depends heavily on semiconductors, battery technology, and increasingly on autonomous systems that overlap with drone technology. A European robotics company building industrial automation systems needs reliable domestic suppliers for chips and power systems, and it also needs customers willing to deploy its robots at scale. By creating guaranteed demand across all four of these interconnected sectors simultaneously, the Industrial Accelerator Act is essentially trying to build an entire self-reinforcing industrial ecosystem rather than just supporting isolated companies. It is worth pausing here to understand why this shift is happening now in this particular political moment. Recent geopolitical tensions have made European leaders acutely aware of how dangerous it is to depend on foreign suppliers for critical technology. Semiconductor shortages during previous global supply chain disruptions exposed just how vulnerable European industries were when they could not access chips manufactured almost entirely in Asia. Energy security concerns following conflicts near European borders further reinforced the idea that technological independence is no longer a nice-to-have but an urgent strategic necessity. Investors and industry leaders have been vocal about this changing mindset throughout the year. Partners at major venture capital firms have described how recent geopolitical events have mobilized European governments to treat defense, industrials, and hard tech as strategic pillars rather than optional investment categories. The phrase being used increasingly in policy circles is that technological sovereignty is now essentially the same thing as economic and geopolitical sovereignty. In other words, a country that cannot manufacture its own chips or batteries cannot truly claim to be independent, no matter how strong its research institutions might be. The mechanics of how this procurement preference actually works deserve some attention, because it is not as simple as banning foreign purchases outright. Instead, the framework tends to use scoring systems in public tenders that award additional points to bidders who use European-made components, meet certain domestic content thresholds, or commit to building manufacturing capacity within the European Union. This approach tries to stay compliant with broader international trade rules while still tilting the playing field meaningfully in favor of domestic manufacturers. Critics argue this could still invite trade disputes, but supporters insist it is a measured approach compared to the more aggressive tariff strategies used elsewhere in the world. Several European cities are positioning themselves to benefit enormously from this shift, and each one brings a different strength to the table. London and Paris continue to dominate in terms of funding access and talent concentration, while Munich and Berlin offer deep expertise in industrial engineering and manufacturing infrastructure. Helsinki and Espoo have quietly built impressive strength in hardware and telecommunications technology, drawing on decades of Nordic engineering tradition. Grenoble stands out specifically for semiconductors, having developed one of Europe's most concentrated clusters of chip design and fabrication expertise over several decades. Cambridge, meanwhile, continues to punch above its weight in deep science and defense-adjacent research, feeding directly into exactly the kind of hard technology this new policy is trying to scale. What makes this moment different from previous European tech initiatives is the recognition that city-level ecosystems solve different problems, meaning a coordinated continental strategy has to account for these regional strengths rather than applying one uniform approach everywhere. The Industrial Accelerator Act essentially tries to knit these regional strengths together into a single mutually reinforcing industrial network spanning the whole continent. Of course, no policy this ambitious comes without serious skepticism, and there are real reasons to question whether it will actually work. European bureaucracy has a well-earned reputation for moving slowly, and procurement reform in particular tends to get bogged down in legal challenges and administrative delays. Some founders have openly worried that government buyers, even when mandated to prioritize European suppliers, will still favor large established corporations over small agile startups simply because bigger companies are easier and less risky to work with. There is also the ever-present risk that political will could weaken over time, especially if budget pressures force governments to prioritize cost savings over strategic domestic sourcing. Another challenge lies in the sheer complexity of coordinating this kind of policy across so many different member states, each with its own procurement laws, political priorities, and existing supplier relationships. A semiconductor preference rule that works smoothly in Germany might face completely different implementation challenges in Poland or Portugal. Harmonizing these rules across the entire European Union while still respecting national sovereignty over public spending decisions is an enormously delicate balancing act. Even strong supporters of the Industrial Accelerator Act acknowledge that execution, not the underlying idea, will ultimately determine whether this policy succeeds or becomes another well-intentioned initiative that never fully delivers. Still, the early signals suggest that something genuinely different is happening compared to previous European tech strategies. Unlike past programs that focused almost entirely on funding research grants or startup accelerators, this policy directly attacks the demand-side problem that has quietly sabotaged European scale-ups for years. Money for research was never really the core issue, because Europe has never lacked capital or brilliant ideas in any meaningful sense. The real issue has always been the absence of a first customer willing to take a chance on unproven domestic technology, and that is precisely the gap this new framework is designed to fill. If the Industrial Accelerator Act succeeds even partially, the ripple effects could extend far beyond the four sectors it directly targets. A thriving domestic semiconductor industry could reduce Europe's exposure to future supply chain shocks in virtually every other technology category that depends on chips. A stronger battery manufacturing base could accelerate the continent's transition to electric vehicles and renewable energy storage while reducing dependency on suppliers in politically sensitive regions. Success in drones and robotics could similarly strengthen both defense capabilities and civilian industries like agriculture, logistics, and manufacturing automation simultaneously. There is also a broader psychological shift happening here that deserves attention, separate from the specific mechanics of procurement law. For years, the dominant narrative around European tech was one of quiet resignation, an acceptance that Europe simply could not compete with the scale and speed of American venture capital or the manufacturing might of Chinese state-backed industry. This new wave of policy signals a fundamental change in that mindset, moving from a defensive posture toward something closer to deliberate industrial strategy. Whether or not every detail of the Industrial Accelerator Act works perfectly, the underlying message is unmistakable, and it says that Europe intends to build, not just invent. So where does this leave European founders sitting in labs and startup offices right now, watching this policy unfold in real time? For semiconductor, battery, drone, and robotics entrepreneurs specifically, this could represent the single most important shift in their operating environment in years, transforming government procurement from an obstacle into an opportunity. For investors, It changes the risk calculus around hard tech investments because guaranteed public sector demand reduces some of the commercialization risk that has traditionally scared capital away from deep tech and towards safer software bets. For everyday citizens across the continent, the implications touch everything from job creation in manufacturing regions to long-term questions about energy security and technological independence from foreign powers. The coming months will reveal a lot about whether this policy has real teeth or whether it ends up as another symbolic gesture buried in bureaucratic complexity. Watch closely for how quickly individual member states actually implement the new procurement scoring rules within their own national systems. Pay attention to whether major public tenders for infrastructure, defense, and energy projects genuinely start favoring domestic hardware suppliers in practice, not just on paper. And keep an eye on whether struggling deep tech startups in cities like Grenoble, Munich, and Helsinki start reporting meaningfully larger order books as a direct result of this shift. What we are witnessing right now might be remembered as the moment Europe finally decided to stop simply hoping its brilliant inventions would find their own way to market success. Instead, the continent is choosing to actively engineer that success by becoming its own first customer, using the collective purchasing power of dozens of governments to build demand where the free market had previously failed to deliver it. It is a bold bet, and like every bold bet, it carries real risk of falling short of its ambitious goals. But if it works even partially, the balance of technological power in the world could look meaningfully different within just a few years. Before you go, take a moment to think about what this kind of policy shift could mean beyond just Europe, because similar demand-side strategies are already being debated in other regions facing the exact same innovation-to-scale gap. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure you are subscribed so you never miss the next deep dive into the policies quietly reshaping global technology. Drop a comment below telling us which sector you think will benefit the most from this shift, whether that is semiconductors, batteries, drones, or robotics. And if you want us to keep tracking how the Industrial Accelerator Act unfolds in the months ahead, give this video a thumbs up so we know to keep this story on our radar. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and we will see you in the next video where we uncover another story most people are not paying attention to yet.